that there's an area at the outer rim of the shooting circle, and in the last 5 minutes of each quarter, if a shooter shoots a long bomb, that is worth 2 points. And what that does is it allows teams to stay in the game for longer. So what happened in the final was that London Pulse sort of went ahead in that first quarter, but then Loughborough Lightning used this super shot really, really well to force their way back into the game. There are no draws now either, so we play to a result, which again, for a commentator, you've got to keep your eyes on all the time. It's been into extra time a number of times, which is just brilliant for fans. You know, you're sort of right in it until the very end. There's rolling substitutions, so things are happening quite quickly, but I think two of the biggest changes are having these arena games, so, you know, giving the space to the fans and saying, this is a spectacle to come and watch, come and be part of this. And then every single game this season as well has been broadcast. And that's so different if you're a fan of a club, because you can follow the story of the season and you become invested in your club and in your players. So for me, that has been a huge and very important change.
It is the BBC's Women's Summer of Sport campaign, which is looking at names that will be made, and it's hoping to put a spotlight on female athletes. Were there any names made last night?
Oh, absolutely. There are names that, believe you me, are going to become household names in this sport. And I think probably the biggest one, the player of the match yesterday, is a player called Fumi Fodeju. Now, she is a goal defence, but what she does on the court, you know, there are certain moves that I have never seen before. She's so athletic. She has an athletics background, and she's sort of flying all over the place, putting in these interceptions, taking these balls that are, you know, pretty much unreadable, and it's just special to watch. She's a special player. So Fumi Fodeju is one. I love watching Elizabeth Scholes, who is the daughter of Paul Scholes. She plays wing attack for London Pulse, and she is so fast, she's so dynamic, getting that ball through to the shooting circle. And also mentions the Loughborough Lightning. You know, they've got some more experienced players, but the likes of Nat Panagari and Beth Cobden, they played World Cup. Beth Cobden had a gold medal from the Commonwealth Games back in 2018. So, you know, this sport is on the rise. These women are on the rise, and they are sensational to watch.
Lindsay Chapman, thank you for keeping up the energy for us. If you'd like to see the highlights reel of that game, it's over at BBC Sports Online. You can catch up with all of the latest there. More messages are coming in on the ways in which you've come about a strong friendship, the unusual context that have led to a beautiful friendship. This message says, since I was teaching in Uganda in the early 1970s, I've been close friends with Deborah, whose family welcomed me into their home, and Zerko when the British teachers left because of Idi Amin's actions. I remained and have been friends with lovely family since. Our personal histories are so different, as Deborah is a subsistence farmer and I grew up with opportunities in England, but the differences didn't and don't matter, as we are firm friends with them. Anne writes, I met my friend Carol in hospital when we were both having our mastectomies. It's just dropped down, there we go. By chance, we discovered that we lived only a few miles from one another. In the following 22 years, until she died, we supported each other through ups and downs because we shared the same challenges. A profound experience. I miss her very much. Thank you for your message, Anne. That is it from today's Women's Hour. There's plenty more tomorrow. In fact, we'll have the creator and comedian Fats Timber with us, all about her new book. Do join us then.
Women's Hour was presented by Kruger Pardee and produced by Andrea Kidd.
Catch the summer of cricket on BBC Sounds.
That shot has a massive blow.
Unbelievable! With commentary on 5 Sports Extra. Advances and takes the catch. And he now punches the air. With reactions from the Test Match Special podcast.
They have so much spirit. They've had a tremendous day's play.
And the funny side with Greg James, Felix White and Jimmy Anderson on Tailenders.
Jimmy, are you having a blast in the blast? We're having a blast watching the blast.
It's been a blast, yeah.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
After the news, on this 20th anniversary of 7/7, we begin a new series where our home and legal correspondent Dominic Casciani will look at how Britain's counter-terror policy has been transformed in the wake of those bombings. State of Terror begins in a couple of minutes here on Radio 4.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. The Prime Minister and the Mayor of London They breathed to memorial in Hyde Park to mark the 20th anniversary of the 7th of July bombings. 52 people died and hundreds were injured when 4 homemade bombs were detonated on London Underground trains at a bus. The King has said his prayers remain with all those whose lives were forever changed. Andrew Dearden was a GP who went to help when the bus blew up near the headquarters of the Doctors' Union, the BMA.
The bus looked like someone had kind of stepped on the back of the bus, just crushed it down. The sort of top floor was missing and the roof was missing. And as I was running towards the bus, I saw the degree of debris that was around it that was thrown 20, 30, 40 yards away. And so at that point began to realise that this was much more than just a car accident or a crash.
A court in the Australian state of Victoria has found a woman guilty of murdering 3 of her in-laws with vegan meal, which included poisonous mushrooms. Erin Patterson has lied to police about her actions and disposed of evidence including dehydrated that she used to prepare the mushrooms. Officials in central Texas have warned the number of deaths caused by Friday's flash floods is certain to keep rising. More than 80 people are known to have been killed so far. The government is being urged not to abolish the grant system providing legally binding plans for pupils with special educational needs. Ministers have declined to rule out scrapping the plans in England as part of proposed reforms. Campaigners say the legal protections they provide are precious. A stretchy toy which has been described as one of the rarest in existence is to go up for auction in the UK this month. It's one of only 30 surviving examples of the original Hulk stretch figure from 1979. It's expected to sell for up to £5,000. BBC News.
Later this morning on Radio 4, we'll hear the story of the Warrington-based artist Eric Tucker, who's become known as the Secret Lowry. After his death in 2018, he was discovered to have produced over 500 paintings of working-class life in the Northwest. We'll hear more in The Secret Painter on Book of the Week, beginning in 45 minutes. But now on Radio 4, in a new series, State of Terror, Dominic Casciani discovers how terrorism changed Britain after the 7/7 attacks on London 20 years ago. There's description of traumatic events from the start of the programme.
Britain changed on the 7th of July 2005. Terrorism changed Britain that day. It changed how we are governed, how much communities trust each other, how safe we feel, and how free we are. And that momentous change began with something utterly banal.
I've missed my stop. I should have been getting off at Baker Street, but I missed the stop, so Paddington was going to be where I got off. And as we pulled out of Edgware Road Station, I could feel something staring at me. I was stood up, and this gentleman at the spray was sat next to me where I was stood, and I could feel him staring at me.
Dan Biddle always travelled at the back of the Circle Line on London's Underground. But that day, it was cramped, and he'd been lucky to find room in the second carriage from the front.
I noticed him lean forward and look along the carriage, and then he sat back and was staring at me, so I was just about to turn around and say, like, what are you looking at? And I see him put his hand in the bag, and then there was just a brilliantly white, bright flash. Heat like I've never experienced before in my life just hit me.
7/7 ringleader Mohammed Sadiq Khan had detonated his rucksack bomb.
Just felt like somebody had filled the carriage with compressed air and then sucked it out really quickly. And I got blown out of the train. I hit the tunnel wall and then I landed in the crawl space between the tunnel wall and the track, so I'm on the floor of the tunnel. I didn't know it was a bomb at the time. I thought, with the white flash, I thought it was an electrical explosion.
Dan wasn't the only person thinking it might have been a terrible accident.
We heard that there had been some sort of incident on the London Underground.
In 2005, Lord Evans, then Jonathan Evans, was Deputy Director of MI5, the UK security service that gathers intelligence to protect the nation.
There was a suggestion that this might be something to do with an electrical fault or something.
I immediately felt that this was potentially something very sinister.
Peter Clark, head of counter-terrorism for the Metropolitan Police, was at home when he got the call. He had a different sense from Evans.
during the 4 days before, some parts of the anti-terrorist branch have been away for a weekend exercise where we went through what we considered would be the worst possible scenario in terms of an attack in London, which was multiple attacks on the Underground.
As the smoke cleared to reveal the awful truth, the police and intelligence services got an urgent message to the nation's leaders.
I was in a conversation with the Chinese president at the time, and Jonathan Powell, who was my chief of staff, was passed a note saying there's been an incident on the London Underground.
Prime Minister Tony Blair was hosting the G8 summit of world leaders at Gleneagles in Scotland.
Even though you hope that it's not terrorism, your instinct tells you that it was right from the very beginning.
Within the half an hour or so, it became clear, particularly with the bus attack in Bloomsbury, that this was terrorism.
I'm Dominic Casciani, and I've covered terrorism as a BBC correspondent over the 20 years since the worst ever act of terror on British soil. Now in this series, State of Terror, I'll be looking at how the attack and the response to it changed it all. I'll be examining how the state responded, how extremist violence changed the nation, and how, in the 2 decades since, we and our leaders have been severely tested by a series of mortal threats.
My protection team came in to take me out of the Virgin lobby. I'm afraid I was kind of thinking what's and they just whisked me down to the car, and then I heard on the radio or somebody say "man down."
In this series, we go behind the scenes with those responsible for protecting us. Prime Ministers Theresa May and Tony Blair, leaders of the UK's security services, police and probation officers trying to contain the threat, who reveal what a terrorist believes.
This idea that, he was going to give up his life to save other people. He wasn't looking at, well, he was going to give up his life by killing other people, but he didn't look at it like that. He was saving other people because he was making a statement.
And we'll meet those paying the highest price as victims and damaged survivors. Some working tirelessly to transform how Britain deals with terror threats today.
Looked at the minister and his entourage and said, "Well, Minister, as you can see, I'm only a small person." But I said, however, I did read somewhere that if you think small is not effective, you have never been in bed with a mosquito. I'm the mosquito, and I ain't going anywhere until this is done.
Just before 9 a.m. on July the 7th, 2005, in the tube tunnel at Edgware Road, Dan Biddle was fighting for his life.
The really weird thing was, straight after the explosion, you could have heard a pin drop in the tunnel. It was almost as if everybody had just took a big intake of breath and waited for somebody to make a noise. And as soon as one person, it was like opening the gates of hell. It was just screaming like I've never heard before.
Were you conscious all the way through that?
Fully. I started screaming for help. Then I heard this really deep South African voice shout out, "What's your name?" I didn't know who he was talking to, so I just was like, "Right, now's your chance." I shouted down. He said, "My name's Adrian, don't worry, I'm going to find you." And Adrian was in the carriage behind the one that I was in. He had managed to pry the door open and get out. He crawled through God knows what to get to me. And then he said to me, "I'm not going to lie to you, this is really going to hurt." And at that point I thought, how? Because everything that's just happened and what I've done and pulling the pole out of myself and all the rest of it.
So you had a pole in you as well?
Yeah, so the pole I've been leaning against when the bomb went off, it sheared off and went through me. The one thing Adrian is, apart from being, he's an absolute hero, he's not a liar. Because he basically had to force his hand into what was left of my left leg, find the femoral artery and pinch it shut to stop it bleeding to death. They reckon I was about 30 seconds to a minute away from leaving out of dying.
Dan was rushed to the nearby St Mary's Hospital, and as its emergency teams desperately tried to save his life, the scale of the 4 bomb attacks in London became clear. 52 dead, and more than 700 injured. Prime Minister Tony Blair flew back from Scotland and addressed the nation that afternoon.
I think we all know what they're trying to do. They're trying to use the slaughter of innocent people to cow us, to frighten us out of doing the things that we want to do, of trying to stop us going about our business as normal as we're entitled. They should not and they must not succeed.
What
what 7-7 did was, it's not worth establishing the nature of the threat, because we knew that threat was there already. But I think it woke us up to the fact that obviously what we had in place was not adequate.
They couldn't restart my heart in the traditional way, so the surgeon opened my chest, moved my ribs, put his hands in it, made me massage my heart to get it going.
Do you know how much blood you lost?
87 units.
87 units of blood. The surgeons were forced to amputate both his legs, but saved his life.
All my bad luck ended once the bomb had gone off, because anybody else up in Adrian finds me, I die. In the space of like 30 seconds to a minute, I come face to face with the worst that it has in the bomber, and I come face to face with the very best that it has in Adrian.
Countless acts of courage and kindness were performed that day by many emergency service workers across the 4 bomb sites, and members of the public too. But in the aftermath, there were very serious questions to face for those in charge of the nation's security, from Prime Minister Tony Blair downwards.
My strategy was based on the belief that people were